I'll record this. And I'm just looking real quick so that I can. Sorry, Ray, I don't think I've ever done that on the how to change this. Oh, should I just go to speaker or is that my own view? Sorry.
If you look for the list of participants, you can mute them all at the bottom.
Oh, you can hear it on there?
Oops. Yeah. Just gonna mute them real quick. Right. Oh, I can go to Audrey and I can do spotlight for everyone. We're learning. We got it. We got it. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We have Audrey White with us, trade unionist, activist, founder of Stop the War Coalition in Liverpool, and now the Ron Todd Award recipient for Socialism of the Heart. Caught that. Well done. Thank you. You've had a busy day. So Audrey is here to speak to us, obviously, 1980s, time when the term sexual harassment wasn't even known, 3 months into a job and having to pick up the fight for not just the women in her own shop, but across Britain, basically. So this is through her union, TGWU, which is now Unite, to fight sexual harassment, institutionalized misogyny, and patriarchy in the workplace. So this is coming off the back of us celebrating International Working Women's Day, as Clara Zetkin would say. So particularly relevant, and it's wonderful to have you here with us. Audrey, I will turn it over to you. If you're okay, I don't know how long you want to speak, but I thought maybe if you wanted to take everybody's questions and then feedback, or do you want maybe just like 3 or 4 questions and then feedback? I'm flexible.
Yeah. I think if I speak for 15 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more, I don't know. And then we'll just say take 2 or 3 questions at a time. Okay. Because it's quite, you know.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's all to you, Audrey.
Okay. I think the first thing to say is that you know, when I get invited to speak quite often it's around the film, and I don't know whether many people have seen the film, and I have to say I welcome the film with reservations, because you know, I don't really feel that the film really gave you know, anybody any information about what sexual harassment actually was. So I won't go into comparisons over the film, but I might just dip in now and then and say what the important differences were. And one of them was that, you know, it did represent the basis of the atmosphere in Liverpool at the time, you know, because there was a real, there's a real atmosphere of rebellion, if you like, you know, within the council, although it wasn't until a bit later that we ended up with the, you know, the 47 and so on, where, you know, very, very famous period of time in council history anyway, really, in the country. It was before that time, but that atmosphere was pervading throughout the city, of hatred for Thatcher, of wanting to fight back. A terrible, it was terrible. I mean, for instance, the company I worked for wouldn't even give me the price of a stamp to reply to young girls who'd written in wanting a job and pleading for a job, you know, desperate for work. And the girls were on very low pay, even though it was a very glamorous high-end store that they were working in. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'd not worked in a store before. I'd been an international fashion buyer. I was very senior. I mean, I used to travel around the world with my personal assistant and everything, buying for companies. So, you know, I was overqualified for this job. And, you know, political beforehand. You know, I was already political from 14 years of age and younger, really, even in school, because of my family background. So, and I was in a union. So when I started that job, you know, I was I was well qualified for it and very professional, and could see straight away. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't like looking for a fight, but I could see straight away that this boss, the area manager of the store, and it was a big company. They had, you know, I think it was over 500 stores, menswear and ladieswear. I could see that this area manager was, you know, was really had a terrible attitude towards the staff, not just, you know, sexually harassing them, but I mean, it's two of them involved, but, you know, just even one of the girls had lost a baby, and she'd miscarried, and it was just like, it was a nightmare of a story what had happened to her, and yet she was treated so badly. And I did speak out a little bit on her behalf as the boss, not as a shop steward or a trade unionist, just as the boss. And I don't think they liked that either. So when it came to sexual harassment, you know, he used to encourage the girls. So one girl who was pretty well endowed, you know, he'd say, well, go and put that see-through blouse on, you know, to show me. And that's, I didn't see that, but that sort of thing they told me had happened. So I suppose I had a whiff of that I might experience something like that. And of course, when it come to closing the shop, it was going to get refurbished. And I was explaining that their uniforms were falling apart. You know, he'd been out for a drink with the previous manageress. And obviously, apparently she used to titillate him by encouraging the staff and so on. So it was a really sick environment to sort of be working in. But I think it was probably quite common. And when I complained about their uniform, he took that opportunity to sexually harass 4 of them. You know, pulling the bra strap down on one of them, pulling the skirt up of another, making reference to another girl's boobs and so on. And, you know, so it was quite, it really was sexual harassment, where, and like in the film, he's trying to have a relationship with Kathy Tyson, and he actually physically assaults her or sexually assaults her really in a fitting room. So there's a big difference between the film and that. So just to talk about the dispute itself, I think the company must have been really shocked that there was a boss in a union. So when I was, when he sacked me over the phone, and because all I did was say I'm responsible for this, for the welfare of the staff, he phoned me at home and just said he was sacking me, wouldn't give me a reason. So I started to cry. I mean, I did. It was very hard times. You know, I was about 32 years of age. You know, we were all on the at the bones of our arses, if you like. We were really suffering in this city, and we were struggling, and it was quite shocking for that to happen to you. And then my union told me to keep going into work till I got something in writing, and which I did. And then they called the police in and threatened to arrest me. So the union, give them their due, the Transport and General Workers Union did jump to my defence and tried to contact the company, and they wouldn't meet. And so we put the picket on. Now, could you imagine standing outside a picket, men and women, dockers, car workers and all the rest of it? Because there's reasonably good turnout even the first day. I don't know how, because we didn't have emails, just phoning round, and some people weren't even on the phone. It was just, that's the way it was done. And they turned up, and of course we were just saying he was interfering with the staff. We didn't, or touching them up and all sorts. I mean, you know, only for the fact my husband got the girls to sign my manager's log. I had a manager's log and I'd recorded it all. And they didn't want to really, they didn't want to get involved probably because of what had happened to me as a boss. But, you know, my husband persuaded them to sign. Otherwise, they could have had us all in court for saying the things we were saying on the picket line and on the placards. So, you know, we started that campaign. We had thousands and thousands of signatures. And what we learned on that picket line, you know, we learned what sexual harassment was. We learned from the people who spoke to us and told us all these stories about what, you know, what with their wives and sisters and daughters and mothers, you know, had endured in work. So it was just, it was like, you know, this steamroller of people talking about sexual harassment. You know, this is why you say you learn on a picket line in hours and days what you learn, you know, from reading books for years. You really, really do. And talking to people. And, you know, it was a great advert for the trade union movement. And, you know, straight away, they agreed to meet us within a day's picketing. And stupidly, and I say this now when I hear anyone say, oh, stop the action because you're going to be able to negotiate. You will always negotiate from a position of strength. You keep on with that pressure. You keep the picket line on. And we didn't. It was wrong. I think a lot of us thought it was wrong then, but they took the picket off. And of course, they thought they could soft soap, you know, the union and soft soap me and you know, we'd all go away. But they weren't reckoning on Liverpool. And when we went to London, they said, oh, well, actually, Audrey, the reason why you were sacked is because you're not very sparkling and bubbly. And we have sparkling and bubbly people at Lady at Lord John. You're not really a lady person. And this is a sort of argument. And we had this thing that my husband had got the girls to sign. And they just poo-pooed it and put it aside. And basically tried to bribe the union official. They went to the toilet together. And Bobby Lamb, who was, he come back, well, of course, he wouldn't have anything of it. And he said, you know, we said, well, we're not interested. He said, what sort of money would Audrey be interested in to go away? You know, we said, no, we're not going away. So we went back to Liverpool and carried on picketing. And it got very, very nasty because they issued an injunction against me and my dad. My brother, he was not a very well man either at the time. And my brother was only young and he was on the People's March for Jobs. But before he went, he was on the picket line. And the union and me for £250,000. This was the new anti-trade union legislation on secondary picketing. And, you know, they were trying to save the injunctions, and you know, I kept having to run round. I mean, every time anybody, it wasn't funny. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny. It was horrendous. Anyway, cut the story. They did issue the injunctions. They actually also used an act from the 1800s. And I think people get a little bit confused with this of the story. It was a different act altogether from the 1800s. And what they did was they had somebody write beautiful calligraphy at the whole length of the window in the shop. Had this act written out, this 1800 act. And it was all about molestation. As if we were molesting people. And of course, all that did was that you know, people wanted to read it, and so it blocked the entrance to the store. So even if anybody wanted to cross the picket line, which was very, very few, they just couldn't get in. So that tactic actually, I kept that actually for years. I don't know where it is now. I think it got damaged, but it was just amazing that they dug up this old act to use against this one woman fighting for her job. And then these £250,000 injunctions. You know, it was talk about the heavy hand of a company thinking that they could get away with, you know, treating people the way they did. And we went to London to sign the injunctions to say, we sort of, well, let's just go and say we will picket legally. And we went and signed, that was the advice of the union, we went and signed in the High Court in Temple, Inns of Temple and all the rest of it. And it's overpowering. I mean, can you imagine it? You know, you're getting dragged through the bloody courts. So we said we'd picket legally. And when we came back, we just went straight back on the picket line. Now, we could really have got into deep trouble then, because all it would have taken was the police to arrest us, you know, for breaking the injunction. And the union, I don't know what would have happened, because the union said, yeah, well, actually, you know, we haven't seen you. We haven't seen you on the picket line. You know, this hasn't happened. And of course, we went on for a long, long time. But the police, I think that the reason why they didn't enforce it was because it was already a massive issue, and it was already this story of the narrative of, you know, one woman defending shop workers, young girls. And it's quite interesting, I don't mention this very often, but the staff were embarrassed by it. They were saying, what does it make us look like? Audrey, why are you doing this for? What does it make us look like? I said, well, that's why you should be out here with me, because none of the girls were in the union. One of them I persuaded to join, but she wouldn't come out with me. So, well, I'd been sacked, you know, and they saw the lesson of, well, if you speak out, you're sacked. So it was a really strange situation that all these staff who had complained to me still carried on work and actually blaming me and embarrassed what their families thought of them. You know, the psychology of all that is just shows how battered women are in the workplace and how conflicted they are and what they have to put up with just to earn the bread, you know. So it is quite an interesting, you know, horrific experience to go through, to sort of understand their position and my position. And, you know, people would want to call them scabs and all that, but I didn't. I just saw that they were really subjected to such conditions and such a mindset that their acceptance of sexual harassment, which they've done, you know, all their lives, was something that they knew was wrong, but thought they were unable in any way, shape or form to fight. So that was why what we did. And them seeing people standing by me must have been, you know, quite a shock to them. So, we know we carried on picketing. The police saw the mood, I think, of people in Liverpool, the company, whoever was directing operations thought, whoa, we can't go any further with this, and just hoped we would eventually go away. And we didn't. I mean, we had articles in the press, and there was a lot of support around the country. I got, you know, trades councils and so on writing to me, giving support. And we didn't know what to do after a while, because it was just going on and on and on. Their tactics had failed. Ours were succeeding. But, you know, we weren't going anywhere fast. So we just they offered me jobs. They started offering me different jobs, more money and all the rest of it. And to be honest with you, to be dead honest, I wanted a victory. I wanted a victory for them all, because, you know, and I really wanted to take a job somewhere, say Warrington, even though I knew I couldn't have got to Warrington every day from where I lived. But I just wanted to be able to say it was a victory. And not one of them, every one of them was saying, we haven't stood here, Audrey, for nothing. We've stood here to see you walk in that door. And it chokes me even now to think of what they were like. It was just absolutely wonderful, and you know, all the money in the world and all the fame in the world and all the glory over everything, nothing, and I genuinely mean this, nothing is like the solidarity that I experienced on that picket line. It was just unbelievable. And particularly from the unemployed and the dockers and the car workers, particularly the men. You know, we expect it from women, you want to see them there, but there was probably as many men as there was women, probably more. There was more men actually than there were women. And the other thing was there was the arrests. It was vicious, you know. A plainclothes policeman came in the morning and pushed my dad out the way. My dad was deaf, you know, and he used to go, you know, hey, what, you know, like this. And the policeman just went, I'll have you, he said. I'm coming back for you after. And one of the pickets said, don't have him, have me. He's an old man. And he came back in his uniform with his mate in the afternoon, and he arrested them all. I was upstairs having a cup of coffee with my sister-in-law, Leslie Mahmood, and we were having a coffee. So when we came down, the wagon, they brought the wagon, just come with the wagon, picked them up, took them. And they tried to say they formed a human chain in front of the store, which was utter nonsense. Nobody had to form a human chain to stop people going across a picket line in Liverpool in the 1980s. So, and the awful thing that happened was a young girl, Angela, she was only, I think she was 16. She was still at school. She went to Sacred Heart School in Crosby, and she was the only girl. In fact, there was 17 people, not pickets, there was only 7 or 8 pickets. There was 17 men arrested in Liverpool that day, and there was one woman, a schoolgirl, and she was the only one who was strip searched.
Bloody.
Absolutely terrible. And with the door open, with the cell door open, kid you not. But we you know, so in the end, we won the complaint against the police. Although we believe that at least one of them got promoted not long afterwards. So, but we did, in theory, we won that. But over the arrest of the pickets, the magistrate, they should have made a movie about the magistrates' court, the trial that they had. It was amazing. Our comrades all we were so disciplined. You know, they all got together and tore the police to ribbons, really. The police, two of them together, 2 Mr. Plods, couldn't get the story straight between 2 of them. Whereas ours, you know, they discussed between themselves and rehearsed it and so on, and made sure that we won. And for the first time in trade union history, this is true, the police had to pay costs to a union. So that was tremendous as well, because, you know, nobody wants, you know, a police record, although you'd wear it like a badge if it was from being on a picket line. And then we had the victory, because we decided, well, this is a stalemate now. Where do we go from here? And of course, we decided that, you know, these bloody laws, we just ignore them. And we had comrades starting to picket in Manchester. I think it was one of the men's store, and in London. And once they knew that, so, you know, you end up having to ignore these. And I do think you can only do it at certain times. You do it when you've got a mass movement behind you, and you do it when you've got, you know, you've got an argument that can't be beaten, and something that would, you know, appeal to most people, which I think that the narrative of that dispute really couldn't be argued with. So we just started to picket other branches, and the company threw their hands up in the air and just said, you know, what do you want, basically. And this is quite a nice part of the story. So when we did go and meet them again, it was what do you want us to do, Mrs. White? What else would you like? Do you want us to sack any of the staff? Do you want us to do? It was just unbelievable. You know, of course, we said we're not in the business of sacking anybody. But what they did, what I said was, well, I'll tell you what you could do is give us a discount for trade union members. And they actually did. They gave us a discount for trade union members in the store. Although I don't think anyone felt kind enough towards the store to ever go in again. But we won. And it was just amazing to have a victory. And a victory for one woman. And you should have seen the people around us were saying, you know, some posh lady would come up with the brolly and she'd be saying, really, all these men have done this for you? You know, they couldn't believe it. This is what trade unionism is about. You know, and we'd go, yeah. So we actually, I think, using this particular story, you know, event, should you know, a story, an event like this is very, very good for trade unionism because it, you know, it explains solidarity. It shows you that sexual harassment itself is a class issue. That you know, that laws, the way the laws are used to oppress women and low-paid workers, because that was what it was about being treated in the same way in which you're being paid, you know, contempt in other words. And this sexual harassment is actually a health and safety issue. And maybe we could talk a little bit more about that afterwards, because I feel like I'm probably spending too much time on just the dispute. On just the dispute. But I would say that afterwards, because I had to go back and work with that man, which was a massive mistake, should never, ever have, the union shouldn't have done it. They're a bit more experienced than me. But I think it was very obvious that I was going to have a hell of a time when I went back to work, and I did 18 months of real hell. And I did fight that, but I had to fight a lot of that on my own. And the union would even phone, the company would phone the union and say, you know, you have to prove Mrs. White was worth fighting for because the store wasn't doing very well. And it wasn't. And it was because of what was going on. I mean, people were spraying perfume around me, the staff, saying that I was smelly, that I was, and then they tried to make out I was, there was theft going on in the store, and either I wasn't doing anything about it, or, you know, what I, you know, am I part of the problem of the stock going missing? It was terrible. I was interviewed one day in the cellar, without a drink for over 6 hours by an ex-policeman who was the head of security of the company. And you couldn't have done that to somebody in a cell, you know, by the police, without any representation. And that was a nightmare. And I ended up getting my branch, and this is what you do, is never mind trying to get the officials to do something, or so, you know, you go to your branch and you get your branch on side. And I did, and they you know, obviously started putting pressure on the trade union officials. And the thing that really helped me was the Equal Opportunities Commission. They wanted me to walk away and say it was tacit dismissal. I've been dismissed because of the way I'm being treated. And I couldn't do that, could I, after everybody fighting for my job? So I was in a bit of a cleft stick, really, you know. But once they knew the EOC was involved and the union had changed their tune, they put their hands up again. They threw their hands up in the air and said, let's have a meeting. And what they'd done was they'd kept some of the manageresses in the store who were there during the dispute. They were manageresses and they were kept there to sort of keep the staff, you know, against me and to cause problems for me to leave. And of course I wouldn't, because I didn't want to turn a victory into a defeat. So anyway, they did. They got rid of them. They got rid of him. And they asked me what I wanted. And, you know, I just did promotions in the store. As soon as that went, the sales and everything went right up. The girls were all happy. There was a good atmosphere in the store. The company started making money. But it just shows you that, you know, they'll do anything to stand by the management for, you know, for the way, because they all think it's okay to treat women in that way. So it was a total victory, you know, all the way through. But one of the funny things was that, you know, when I said I'm leaving, they were like, oh, what are you leaving for? I'm sorry, but, you know, everything's going fine. And I said, well, to be honest with you, it's such a crummy job on such crummy pay. I would have left probably within the 12 months anyway. They would actually ask me to stay. But I had a miscarriage and I did want to start a family then. And then I started with my baby. My only had my son then. So it was a very traumatic time, but a very rich period of my life. And I always said, true, I never won that dispute. It was the solidarity of the working class in Liverpool at that time, which was very special, and gave us all a lesson, every one of us a lesson of if you're determined enough, you're united enough, and you disregard everything that tells you can't win, everything that says, oh, you know, you can't do that. No, that's against the law. That's against the company won't like this, or the police won't like that. Fight everything, and that's why I always say, fight wherever you stand. If you see injustice, fight it. And that sounds a bit glib, I know, but I've done that all my life, and I've paid the price. I never worked again. But I've never regretted it. I've never actually even thought of it until I've heard some of the people today, the right wing, with their little careerists, jobs, councillors or MPs going, well, you know, I might lose my job. Well, lose your job, face the consequences, do the right thing. And if more people did that, we'd have more victories and we wouldn't be where we are today. So I'll finish there, because I'm sure there's lots that we can move on about women generally and sexual harassment itself in questions. So I'll just leave it at that.
That's wonderful, Audrey. As I was saying, I've lost the clock. I was sitting there listening to you and I was taking some notes. I'm sure many people want to give you a round of applause and have questions. So I'm going to let them do that first. I will switch this. I'll stop